Okay, so I just finished making this beat, and I apologize if you hear me sniffling a lot. I do have pretty bad allergies right now. And I'll probably be, changing things in the mix as I go as well, because I kind of mix and master. I mix as I go, but then when I'm mastering, I tend to pull, certain levels up, and so I'll, or down, or whatever the case may be. So I've got all of my sounds going to one bus. So I've got all my melodies, I've got my 808, I have all my drums, and all of those are going to one place, and I call this my pre-master chain. I kind of master in two different chains. You could probably get away with doing it all in one, but like I said, I do it in two. Okay, so the first thing in my pre-master chain is an EQ, where I'm cutting the low lows and the high highs. I'm also kind of boosting the sub-bass frequencies a little bit. Let's listen to it, and then we can listen to it and just see if we want to boost the subs a little bit. Yeah, that looks fine to me. Okay, sounds fine to me too. So the next thing in the chain is Maximus. So you'll see I have 3 different instances of Maximus, and I'm kind of doing the same thing in all of them. The differences will be where my bands are placed. So these will be different in each one. And also you'll notice that in the first instance, my bands are up here by the 9, which means I'm compressing, but kind of lightly. In the second instance, you'll notice they are closer to the 6. And then in the third one, they're down by the 3. In each instance of Maximus, I'm compressing more and more aggressively, essentially, as well as moving the bands. Something else you'll notice is for all of my lows, I'm merging the signal, and then for all my highs, I'm separating them. So let's begin. Okay, so for this first Maximus instance, I've got my bands placed kind of in extremes. So my low band is 50 hertz and below, my high band is 10K and above, and then everything in between is the rest of the beat. So let's begin. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that my low end is getting at least to this point here. So this is negative 8.7 decibels. And it looks like I am. I'm actually getting above that. So if I leave it where it is, I'm going to be compressing a little bit, which is actually okay. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost a little bit of volume into this. And the reason is because I want these little not as loud things to be brought up just a little bit. And then something else I'm going to do, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there is a little bit of residual sound going on between the 808 hits. So I'm going to try and get rid of that as much as I can. So I'm going to put a node pretty low, almost as low as I can. And then I'm going to curve this down. So what that does is it turns the volume down of anything that's below this red line. You can see it's bringing the volume down of anything below that red line. And then I like to kind of do the opposite with my 808s for the louder stuff and bring the louder stuff up. So it kind of makes like an S curve. I'm actually going to go back to the mix and take away a little bit of that high end from the 808. Let's go back. Okay, let's go to the mids. And again, the mids are basically the entire beat here, so we don't want to do too much compression. In fact, we're already compressing a little bit, so we don't need to do too much. 0.5 is fine. Let's go to the highs. Oh, I forgot to level match. Okay, so on my lows, I didn't level match because I was getting the levels where I wanted them to be. On the other bands, I'm probably going to level match. The exception will be the master. So on the mids, I brought this up by 0.5. So let's bring it down by 0.5. Let's go to the highs. And on the highs, I've already done the compression that I want. And I don't need to level match because I didn't push any volume or pull any volume at all. So let's go to the master. That's probably enough. Okay, now we're going to go to the second instance of Maximus and do basically the same thing. The difference will be, like I said, the band placement. So instead of being down by the 50, we're now up by 175 for the low band. And the high band has been brought up to the 5K mark instead of the 10K. So let's go to the lows. So I push this up by 1.7. Let's pull it back by 1.7. So I push this up by 0.5. Let's pull it back by 0.5. Let's go to the highs. Okay, we push this up by 0.7. Let's pull it back by 0.7. Okay. Let's go to the third instance of Maximus. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to change how I set up the bands. So I'm going to solo the mid band, go over my bands, and then I'm going to move my low band until I don't really hear that kick or that 808 much anymore. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the high band, but for the hi-hats, obviously. So let's do this. Brought this up by 0.7, let's pull it back by 0.7. Okay, I want to bring down that rim a little bit because it seems to be just as loud as the main snare, and I don't really want that. In fact, I'm going to make the main snare a little bit louder and push it into a wave shaper. So I might do a hard clipper, I might do a soft clipper. Let's start with the hard clipper. Try a soft clipper. Okay, let's go back. There we go. Okay, so that little rim there was getting up just as loud as my main snare clap was, and I didn't really want that. So I went back to the mix and turned it down a little bit. And now I think I have the compression where I want it, and I haven't pushed or pulled the volume at all. Let's just double check. Now I'm going to use the expansion function to turn up, hopefully, just that main snare clap, although this may be barely grabbing that rim a little bit. So let's turn the rim down just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and then anything above this orange line, I'm going to turn up, which is basically just going to be the main snare clap. We need to level match, so let's go to highs. Go by 0.6, pull it back by 0.6. For the master. Okay, and that is it for the first 3 instances of Maximus. The next 2 things we'll have in the chain are patcher presets. So the first one is for stereo separation. Okay, so the next thing in my master chain is a mid-side EQ. So on just the sides, I'm cutting the sub-bass frequencies and then boosting the bass just a little bit. Seems like I might be getting a little bit too loud on these crash sounds. Not that one. That one. So that bzzz one, it's too loud. Let me turn that down. Okay. And then on just the mids, I've got a fruity limiter, which is both limiting a little bit, and then it's also adding a little bit of saturation to the stuff on the top. Then I have another EQ for just the mids. Okay, I kind of want to boost the bass a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go back to the melody. No, it's not. It's this one. This one is just really loud in this middle section, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of distracting to me, so I turned it down just a little bit. Okay, let's go to the next thing in our chain, which is a wave shaper. Okay, I've got this set to a hard clipping setting. And I also have the low lows kind of being boosted a little bit. I just undid it. So let's just listen to it as it is. And I'm also pushing 5% of extra volume. So this is going up into a hard clipper, and then I'm pushing an extra 5% of volume up into it just a little bit. So I'm going to keep that. Okay, so let's look at our next thing in our chain. So I have my wave shaper, and I hard clipped off some signal off the top, which means I can come over to my limiter and turn it up by 0.3 decibels. You'll notice I'm not hitting the limiter, even though I just pushed it up by 0.3 decibels. And that's because I hard clipped off some of that signal with the hard clipper. Okay, let's save it, and then I have my master. So the first thing I have is a limiter and a couple of compressors, and then this EQ is just cutting the low lows. It's just kind of cutting the sub-bass frequencies down. So I have 2 compressors and a limiter. Normally, this second compressor is turned either all the way off or just barely mixed in like it is now. I don't think I've ever had this above like 15% mixed on. And if you look at the settings, you'll see why. It's got a 0 attack, a slow release, and a 3-to-1 ratio, which doesn't seem too ridiculous. But then I have the threshold being brought down by 30 and the gain being cranked up by over 20. So if you're wearing headphones, you might want to turn the volume down because this is going to get loud. I'm going to mix this all the way on, which again, I never do. I just want us to hear what it sounds like if it is mixed all the way on. So in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I don't know if you could hear it or not, but that's too much compression. And the way that you know it's too much compression is because it sounds like, well, the way people describe it is they describe it like there's a pumping effect. I describe it as though there's a whooshing effect. It's the same idea. It's where you have everything that's really loud being brought up all together, and so the compressor is having to essentially turn all that louder stuff down. And then when some of that information goes away, or is taken out for a second, everything else gets brought up in volume to make up for that. And so you get this like really loud, really quiet, really loud pumping like effect. And so this is obviously too much. And so what I'll normally do is either turn it all the way off, like I said, or I'll mix it down to like, 8, 9%, 5%, 10%, somewhere in there. And just add a little bit of that over compressed signal in, not a lot. Okay, and the first compressor I have has a little bit less ridiculous settings. I've got a slower attack, slower release. Okay, 3-to-1 ratio, and my threshold's being brought down by 11 decibels. My gain's being pushed up by 2 or 3. Here's what it. So in this case, I actually like the way that it sounds with it mixed all the way on. Sometimes I don't, and I'll just leave it halfway mixed on. There have also been times where I've turned it off completely. But in this case, I like how it sounds with it mixed all the way on. Okay, so let's go to the next thing in our chain. It's a patcher preset, which is doing the same thing with the stereo, just taking the lows, putting them in mono, taking the highs, pushing them out to the sides, play with the middle to taste. And then I have another instance of Maximus. And I'm going to treat this one the same way I treated the third instance, where I'm going to solo the midband and move them so that I don't hear the kick 808 or the hi-hats quite as much. And then the process will be almost identical to what I've done before. The difference will be, now instead of compressing, or compressing more aggressively, or compressing more aggressively, now I'm flat, which means I'm limiting. So that's really the only other difference in this case. Okay, I'm going to go back to my wave shaper and make sure I don't have too much distortion. Yeah, I'm going to undo the kind of distortion and stuff I was doing to the loud stuff, because I didn't really I think there was too much distortion happening. In fact, let me go back to my 808 and take away a little bit more of that high end. Okay, so we're on the lows. So I pushed up into this by 0.4, pull it back by 0.4. Let's go to the mids. So what I just did was I went back to my rim, because after doing more compression and bringing levels up, the rim got a little bit too loud again. So what I did was I went to the rim and added an EQ, and where I wanted the rim to not be as loud or prominent was in the mid-range, because that's where I want my snare clap to be the most dominant. So I just went into this like high mid-range and just ducked the volume down, but I didn't want to just do that, because then it may like lose some character as well as volume. So I kind of boosted the lower parts as well as the higher parts to kind of like make up for that. Let's go back to Maximus. Okay, so I've put a node a little bit below this. I think I changed my mind. I think I do want to push this, because I do have a snare clap that's a little bit quieter than everything else. So I'm going to push a little bit. So let's say 0.5, pull it back by 0.5. And then let's use the expansion function to make everything above this orange line just a little bit louder. Let's go to the highs. Push up into this by 0.9. Let's pull it back by 0.9. Let's go to the master. Okay. And the next couple of things I have in my chain are a soft clipper, a limiter, and a loudness meter. We'll worry about the loudness meter in a second. I want to turn off the soft clipper, and then we're just going to look at the signal for the Fruity limiter and see about how much we think we can push the volume up into that soft clipper. Around there, that'll be my starting point. So that's 1.1. So let's pull it down by 1.1 and see if it's too loud, too soft, whatever. So I'm going to go to Maximus. I'm going to turn on my soft clipper, and then I'm going to push 1.1 decibels. So I just pushed 1.1 decibels after Maximus. It's going to go into the soft clipper. It's going to get soft clipped, and then we'll see it here. Okay, looks good. So now I'm going to turn on my loudness meter, and I'm going to make sure the whole B is playing. Also, if you notice that I'm using this tool incorrectly, or I can use it better, please let me know down in the comments. I'm relatively new to using it. I have been, playing around with it, but I would like to learn more. So I'm essentially looking for a couple of things. I'm looking at this number right here, the integrated LUFS, just to kind of tell me how loud my track is overall. I'm looking at the short-term LUFS you know, every once in a while just to see how loud I am getting in certain instances. I'm also looking at the true peak max, which means I'm basically just trying to make sure that my track isn't going above 0. And if I do get up to 0 or above it, I'm going to turn the whole track down until I'm not. So let's let it play. Okay, so I never got above 0, and this was a little bit quieter than I probably wanted. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to push the volume a little bit more. So let's push it just a couple more. And then I'm going to come back to this compressor, or both of them, and I'm going to push just a little bit extra volume into both. And then we'll run it again. Okay, so this time I did get up to 0, so I'm going to turn it down by 0.1 decibels. And then I think we'll call the video there. So yeah, if you have any questions about any part of this process, let me know in the comments. Also, if you have suggestions for what you'd like to see in a future video, feel free to throw that down in the comments. But yeah, let's just listen back to this for a second and we'll let it ride.